It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Ferret. An exhibit at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum shares the stories of veterans and their public service after they left the military.
It's called Traditions, Stories of Service to Country and Community, and it runs through July 6th. It highlights stories of men and women who have served in the military from the 2000s dating back to the Civil War.
David Zien is highlighted in the exhibit. Zien is a Vietnam veteran who served in the Marine Corps from 1968 to 1970. He later became a state senator in Wisconsin for 18 years. Zien told the Wisconsin Veterans Museum back in 2006 that after leaving the military, he became a post-traumatic stress disorder counselor with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
How did I work through it? Self-disclosure, all the psychology you read and everything else, being open about it. And I got a couple friends who are Vietnam vets. As you know, Vietnam vets can talk to Vietnam vets a lot better, easier, as you are. I don't usually disclose as much.
Another veteran highlighted in this new exhibit is Tara Gundrum. She served in the Marines from 1998 to 2005. She told the museum it was challenging to transition to civilian life after her years of service.
It was hard because I felt like all the time that I had spent was kind of, it wasn't wasted. And I knew that it wasn't wasted, but on paper it's wasted. It means nothing without a degree. And so it's like, in some aspect, you felt like you had to start over to achieve something that you didn't realize, like, you didn't necessarily feel that you need. Like, why do I need a degree to do what I know how to do?
Greg Krieger joins us now. He's curator of exhibits at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. Greg, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you.
As with a lot of things that happen in your museum, it runs the gamut of Civil War era, maybe sometimes even earlier, all the way up to people still with us today, maybe just a few years or a decade out of their own military service. Can you talk about why it's important that we cover that whole scope of Wisconsin service in the military?
A lot of these veterans, not only served in military service, but they came home and continued to serve their communities, civically, for instance. We have governors that were military veterans, senators, representatives, and then people that are, still just helping out in their communities on a very local scale. They're doing, bicycle rides that the funds go to benefit veterans when they come home. Maybe the transition from military to civic life isn't that smooth for a particular veteran. So there's programs out there, events that raise funds for, helping those veterans. Just runs the gamut with the way and depth that these people served.
Walk us through the exhibit when it opens and we visit in person at the Veterans Museum. What are we going to see? Both how you're telling the stories about the veterans, objects in some cases paired with those stories.
We made an attempt to display some objects that have not been seen for a long time or perhaps never been on display. This exhibit's only going to be up for 4 months, which is a very short turnaround for us. Some of these artifacts are very delicate. We have a pair of boots that Ray Stubbe of Wauwatosa wore. He was a Navy chaplain. He served at the siege of Khe Sanh in the Vietnam War, and he saved a pair of boots that he wore were absolutely caked with Khe Sanh mud. And those boots are still caked with Khe Sanh mud today. Wow. We actually hired a conservator to kind of semi-permanently attach the mud to the boots. But as you can imagine, that's a very delicate piece. And those boots are on display. We have a vest that Lucius Fairchild wore when he lost his arm at the Battle of Gettysburg. And a surgeon, had to cut his sleeve off to amputate his arm. Well, we have that vest on display. As you can imagine, it's over 150 years old now. Very delicate piece. There's a flag that a gentleman brought home from the Middle East, state flag, Wisconsin state flag, and he flew it every time they stopped his Bradley fighting vehicle. And the flag was encrusted with, Middle Eastern dust, let's say. and still is today. So that flag will be out on display, and you can clearly see the dirt, adhering to this flag. Again, a very sensitive piece, but really neat. And just one look at it, you can tell, yeah, that went into battle for sure.
We're talking about a new exhibit showcasing the contributions of Wisconsin military veterans during and after their military service. Greg Krieger is with us, curator of exhibits at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. Greg, let's dig into some of these stories a little bit. One, you've already touched on Colonel Lucius Fairchild, lost his arm, as you mentioned, in the U.S. Civil War. Well, his public service didn't stop then. Can you talk about what he went on to here in Wisconsin?
When he got home, got back to Wisconsin, he was an early advocate for veterans. Again, Wisconsin was a new state at the time, and these returning veterans had a lot of needs, if you will. He himself had lost an arm, and others had other challenges ahead of them. So he basically joined this group of veterans called the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, they named themselves, and they became very politically active. They lobbied legislatures to provide funds for these people to kind of retire, and live comfortably after their service ended. Again, very early advocate. That was something that was very new at the time, and was very effective. The GAR was very powerful in the late 19th and even into the early 20th century. Just a neat story.
Another veteran you highlight in the exhibit is Tara Gundrum, a Marine. You say her service is emblematic of many women who began serving in the Marines at the turn of the century. Can you talk a little bit about her? And she's another person. I think you mentioned bike rides to raise funds. She has done exactly that, biking to Washington, D.C. To raise money for memorial projects. Talk a little bit about her and her place in the exhibit.
Tara resides in Washington County. And she joined Rotary, so another civic organization that does great things. And yeah, she likes to participate in rides across Wisconsin, which is nicknamed RAW. She's an active member of the Marine Corps League. Again, just has a very big heart and is interested in giving back to her community at in her case, a local level and a greater state level.
Another name, this one was familiar to me as someone who's covered Wisconsin politics for a long time, David Zien. I knew him as State Senator Zien back in the day when I used to book him to come on public radio. What does your exhibit tell us about his military career and his activism in support of veterans?
So Dave got back to Wisconsin, and he's a big Harley guy, as a lot of people will probably know. He rode around the country just trying to raise awareness basically about veterans, and then coinciding like motorcycles right or motorcyclists right. Helmet laws, for instance, were a big thing in the 80s and 90s in this state, and so we tried to raise awareness about that. Obviously, went on to the state legislature from 1988 to 2006. He's a very nice guy. He's quite the character. You will never miss him. If he rides by, again, just a great guy, great story.
Greg, what are you hoping people take away from this temporary exhibit?
I think, the contribution that these Wisconsin citizens gave to not only their country but their state is really incredible. They sacrificed life and limb for their country, then came home and again just continued to serve, continued to give back to their communities, and just a knowledge of that. Some of the state symbols that we think of today, like "On Wisconsin," which is now our state song, that phrase was coined by Lieutenant Arthur MacArthur, who led an attack of the 24th Wisconsin with the cry "On Wisconsin" at the Battle of Missionary Ridge in the Civil War. Those are terms that we are familiar with today as kind of our state motto, things of that nature. Well, that was used in battle in the Civil War. So perhaps people could walk away with just a greater sense of history, That's one of the reasons why we call it traditions, because we sing these songs, we salute this flag, but we try to dig a little deeper and, okay, where did that flag come from? Why was that song written? Things of that nature.
Greg, we'll leave it there. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Greg Krieger is the curator of exhibits at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. The exhibit Traditions, Stories of Service to Country and Community runs through July 6th.
Did you ever wonder about something in Wisconsin, but you didn't know who to ask for an answer?
WPR's Wisconsin project may have the answer you're looking for. We'd love to hear your questions. What do you wonder about Wisconsin or its people that you want WPR to investigate?
It can be something serious or maybe a little bit off the beaten path. Past Wisconsin questions have tackled the origin and meaning of the word ope, as in, oh, just gonna slide past you there. And why is Michigan's Upper Peninsula part of Michigan instead of Wisconsin?
Submit your question. Hopefully we can find an answer. Visit WPR.org/Wisconsin. That's WHY Wisconsin. And thanks for listening to Wisconsin Today. Coming up on Wisconsin Today, Waupun Prison could become a vocational village under a plan from Governor Evers. Michigan pioneered these programs in the skilled trades.
These programs do make a difference. They give people the necessary skills to be able to go out and find a job and keep a job.
Job readiness after prison, that's ahead on WPR News.
It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Governor Evers is proposing an overhaul of the corrections system in his proposed budget blueprint. He wants to turn Waupun Correctional Institution into what's called a vocational village.
This would involve overhauling the 174-year-old prison building and replacing it with new housing and job training facilities where inmates would learn skilled trades like carpentry, automotive mechanics, and welding.
The country's first of its kind vocational village program started next door to us in Ionia, Michigan. In 2016, the director of the Michigan Department of Corrections, Heidi Washington, wanted to address a workforce problem around the state.
The model has since been replicated around Michigan and in other states, and Michigan's corrections director, Heidi Washington, joins us now. Welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you. It's great to be on your show.
What led you to open this style of training program for people in your care?
Well, I've been working in the Department of Corrections for about 26 years, including being a prison warden for many of those years. And I was always aware of the education programs that existed within the department. But when I became director, I really wanted to focus on a much more immersive way to deliver education and skills training. And so really wanted to provide something that not only taught high-skilled, in-demand trades, but also taught individuals what it is to be an employee, what an employer is expecting of you. And so the Vocational Village was really built around that, around being the first of its kind skilled trades training center inside of a correctional facility that provides a positive learning community for prisoners, but also teaches them what employers expect of them, which is to come to work every day and put in a full day's work. And so those are just some of the, sort of foundational components of what the Vocational Village was built on.
How do you decide who gets in, who is able to have this opportunity?
The Vocational Village is an application process, and so we're looking for individuals who are within 18 months to 2 years of their release date, so of going home. We ask them to apply and to really state to us and explain to us why they are ready to make this type of a commitment and what they hope to do with this opportunity if they're selected for the program. We also want to be sure that we are looking at what they have an interest in doing and what they have an aptitude for. And we consider all of that in their admission to the program. So we really want to be sure that we're training them in something that they have a reasonable or realistic likelihood of actually being able to achieve employment in. So Michigan's a very broad, geographically diverse state, I will say. And, we want to be sure that if you're going back to part of our state that doesn't have CNC machining, for instance, that's not the trade we're training you in. So we want to make sure that where you're going and what we train you in, there's an opportunity for you to get a job. And then once you are accepted to the Vocational Village and we've determined that you meet the criteria, you're the right security level, you don't have a significant misconduct history, then you are transferred to the Vocational Village, where part of the model is that everybody lives together in one housing unit. And so we separate the students in the Vocational Village from the rest of the individuals living at the prison. So they go to Vocational Village together, they go to their meals together, they recreate together, and they will remain like that until they are released on parole. And we've found that that is helpful in creating a supportive community within the Vocational Village.
Wow, you really create then a community that is working together, progressing together, and it sounds like there are built-in support systems there.
Right, definitely built-in support systems. They are able to go back to their housing unit after those classes are done and take their materials so that they can study. The programs that we offer, they're very intensive. I would say that they're difficult. They're challenging programs, things like CNC machining, robotics, 3D printing, for example. And a lot of them are math heavy, so there's a lot of studying that has to go into making sure that they can master all of the skills. We also have a very robust college program in the Michigan Department of Corrections. And so we often pair our college students in study halls with our Vocational Village students in the event that they need extra support in certain areas of study.
And when you track things like recidivism or the return to prison rate and employment rates for people after their release who have gone through the Village program, can you share some of the outcomes?
Sure. We do have some preliminary data. We've looked at the success of individuals overall in the Department of Corrections, in other words, the recidivism rate, compared to the success of those who have gone through the Vocational Village and completed the program and then been released. And what we have found is that the success for vocational villagers is roughly double what the success of non-vocational villagers, or I guess to put it conversely, the recidivism rate is cut in half. So recidivism overall in the state of Michigan is around 22%. And the data that we have looked at tracking the vocational villagers found that the recidivism rate of those individuals was about 12%. So it's a significant difference, meaning that these programs do make a difference. They give people the necessary skills to be able to go out and find a job and keep a job. So we're very proud of that. And employment rate would be similar. We track overall employment, and then we also track specifically for those who have completed these programs. And overall, those who have completed the Vocational Village have about a 65% employment rate on average. And so we're pretty happy with that number. We're, of course, always striving to get it even higher.
I'm curious about your partnerships with the private sector here. How have companies worked with the Vocational Village? What is their contribution to this?
First of all, without employer partners, we wouldn't be where we are. So it's obviously very necessary that we are constantly developing new relationships with potential employers because once we've trained these men and women, we want to be sure that they have a job to go to. So we have actually brought on what we call job developers in our department, and these are individuals who are working exclusively with recruiting new employers and then, working with the employers we have to set up interviews, to introduce the students, to make sure that employers know every month who's coming up for parole and what credentials they have. So, we're working with about 750 employers statewide, and we have a regular email blast that goes out to them that's introducing them to the individuals who are seeking work. And it's been just phenomenal to have so many great employers that see the value of this program. And it really has been a benefit for them because they have large demands to hire skilled people, and we have the ability to be responsive to that and to train them specifically for what employers need.
Here in Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers is proposing a vocational village for our state, and I'm wondering, what should Wisconsin be prepared for if this goes through?
Prepare for creating a program that's transformational both inside your correctional facilities and outside. And, in addition to obviously impacting the lives of the individuals who are going through the program, it also has the ability to impact the culture of the facility where it's housed. We know from operating 3 vocational villages now that the individuals who are in this program, they're engaged, they're hopeful, they're optimistic, they are working very hard in a positive pro-social way towards their future, and they are not engaged in trouble. We don't really have any issues within the vocational villages in terms of assaults, misconducts, those types of things. So it's creating a safer environment inside prison. And then it is, creating the opportunity for employers in our state to fill open positions with very talented, skilled individuals. And then most importantly, above all, it is helping people to not return to a life of crime and not to be creating additional victims. And, that's what we're really after. When we can do that, that's when we really achieve long-term public safety for the taxpayers and the residents of our state. And hopefully we can even break the cycle of intergenerational criminal behavior and stop the next generation from coming.
Director Heidi Washington, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That is Michigan Department of Corrections Director Heidi Washington, who opened the nation's first-of-its-kind vocational village program in 2016. Now we turn to a former participant of the program. Marcos Fernandez is president of Ideal Welding Solutions in Hudsonville, Michigan, and graduated from a vocational village in 2018. Marcos, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You had been in and out of prison, serving around 13 years in all, and you described getting out was like being hit by a brick wall. How were you able to make that brick wall disappear, and what happened?
Having a skilled trade, prior to having a skilled trade in welding, every time I got out, it was difficult to find jobs. For one, is because of the criminal record. For two, not really having no job history. So by being able to received a skilled trade, and actually the MDLC helping me, the vocational village, getting me a job prior to me getting out, gave me a head start.
What do you love about welding?
Welding and fabricating is completely different. It helps you be more creative. You got to have a creative mind to be a true fabricator. I always tell these guys, anybody can weld a bead, but only a true fabricator can understand and problem solve on how to make sure understand the differences of the metal, what the heat does to it, and what it doesn't.
And you graduated from the Village program in 2018. What were the initial steps when you got out of the program?
When I got out of the program, once I graduated and prior to me being released, they already contacted employers, and they had employers come in and do like tours. So I knew I had a job getting out. So once I got out, same day I got out, I went and did a weld test with this company, and I passed the weld test, and I started that following Monday.
You didn't have to explain to that company anything, I would imagine, about your background. You just had to demonstrate your skills. You had to demonstrate your proficiency in welding. What impact did that have on you?
Well, it helped out a lot because prior to that, it's like you always have to put down your whole criminal record. You have to put down everything that you've been in there. Then you got to explain that. The impact is like it gives you more confidence because now they're just looking at you for your skills rather than what you did wrong in the past, the mistakes you made.
Fast forward to today, you're a business owner. Can you tell us about the success of your welding business?
Well, yeah. Well, my welding business, I stopped working at the last company. I just thought to myself, like, I got to start my own company. I got to take my future in my own hands. And it was a struggle. I sold my house. I went all in with my company and believing in myself. And my first year, I think I didn't do much. I did like 0 in sales. It was just getting everything going because it was difficult to even get a location. My second year after I built the company out, I was able to do 25,000 in sales. In my third year, I did 225,000 in sales. So I jumped up a lot. And by doing that, I was able to purchase another company. So now with my new company, we're doing between $75,000 to $100,000 in sales a month. So it's completely different.
Did you know you were a business entrepreneur? Did you know you had this in you?
I always knew I wanted to start a business, but I never knew what business to start. It was until I found out that I really had a niche in fabricating. Don't let me mislead anybody. It's been a struggle. But by learning and just keeping on going, just getting up every day and keeping the fight alive is what I look at. It's all about the grind. Get up every day, continue moving. You learn every day. This business is never ending.
I understand you hired a person who's gone on through the Vocational Village program. How did that feel?
It felt really great to give an opportunity back to somebody that went through the same thing. And even with him, like he went from, he worked with Ideal, my first company, and then I am hiring him through my second company. And even with him, it helped him a lot because now he can relate to somebody that's been through what he's been through. He's they're like really appreciative. You see the workforce out here is completely different. You know what I mean? You got, some people that never went through that struggle and some people that have. And with him, he's like very appreciative, and I just try to guide him the best I can.
You referred to that struggle, and my mind immediately went to someone who is justice involved or who has a background as an inmate. When those conversations come up with your employees, perhaps, how do you handle them?
Straightforward. Everybody knows I got a background. Everybody knows, you know what I mean? And we just try to work through it. We try to work through the problem, And, even being an inmate, and like I went back to the MDLC and I spoke to the guys there, you know what I mean? And I just let them know, like, I've been where you've been at. I know what the struggle is. And at the same time, that everything can be better. If you use your skills to what you need to do, you know what I mean? You're going to be okay.
Well, seeing is believing. You have growing businesses. They can't deny that. You can't deny that. How does it feel to be a motivational speaker to them?
I just thought to myself, as long as, if I can reach out to one person, and I think that would be great. When you're speaking, you can see the facial expressions to the people. So some people, like even in the beginning, some people were like, yeah, whatever, like who's this guy? But I think at that point, this one guy that I was actually incarcerated with, he stood up and he was like, I know a lot of you probably don't believe, but I sat right here on a bench with him and he explained to me exactly what he was going to go do. He was like, the business model changed because I was looking at that point as a mobile welding company. He was like, but the business model changed to him doing fabricating and machining. He was like, but his dream was still the same. He was like, so I can actually say like I was here with him and me actually seeing guys I was locked up with and coming back to see them again. It was, it was a wonderful feeling that actually to speak to them and just let them know, like, look, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Marcos, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Marcos Fernandez is president of Ideal Welding Solutions. It's a metal fabricator in Hudsonville, Michigan. He graduated from a Michigan Vocational Village program in 2018. And earlier, we spoke with the director of the Michigan Department of Corrections, Heidi Washington, who opened the nation's first of its kind vocational village program in Ionia, Michigan in 2016. Governor Tony Evers is proposing a vocational village model for the Waupun prison as part of an overhaul of the prison system in his new 2-year budget proposal. The program in Waupun would focus on expanding job training. Coming up, La Crosse now allows smaller housing options on existing residential lots. Find out why and meet 2 winners of a City Design Award.
A design like this can fit in with all sorts of different types of circumstances. Just because it's a small residence doesn't mean that it's not going to be a good residence.
That's next on WPR News. It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. In western Wisconsin, residents are looking to an online library for affordable housing ideas.
Last year, the city of La Crosse passed an ordinance to allow separate housing units to exist on the same lot as an existing home. They're called accessory dwelling units, or ADUs for short.
One goal is to boost housing availability in the community. Lewis Kuhlman is the environmental and sustainability planner for La Crosse. Lewis, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For people not familiar with this concept, what do we mean when we say accessory dwelling unit?
Well, it's like a smaller house in your backyard in place of a detached garage. It's typically called a backyard cottage or a granny flat or an in-law unit, but it's basically just a smaller house in your backyard.
The city of La Crosse passed this ordinance to allow more flexibility on accessory dwelling units. This is last year. What are the hopes for this? What are the goals when it comes to housing in the city?
There's a lot of demand for housing in La Crosse, as there is across Wisconsin, and we're really geographically limited by the Mississippi River and the bluffs, the river bluffs around the city. So in terms of growth, we really have to focus inward. And we're doing a lot of work on infill development. But in terms of how to add housing to our neighborhoods, one of the things we're looking at is accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, because they are able to kind of subtly blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. You're not going to see a dramatic skyscraper or even, like a sort of 5-story box pop up on your block. It's just something that's on the backside of the home, facing an alley, that's really going to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood.
As part of this effort, you have this design competition to help come up with ideas, encourage people to check out this idea. We'll hear from a couple of the winners of that competition in just a few minutes. Can you talk about the competition and this library of accessory dwelling unit options you are developing there?
Yeah, it was a really exciting process. We were able to get a grant through the AARP's Community Challenge and partnered with the Wisconsin chapter of the American Institute of Architects to promote the challenge. So we got a number of submissions from across the state and even from the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We were really excited to get different ideas that were specific to La Crosse's zoning requirements, but also that we could incorporate into Wisconsin's building code because Wisconsin has a different building code than our surrounding states, so we have different challenges. So it was a really good opportunity for us to come up with design ideas that could be used in La Crosse and hopefully be an inspiration for accessory dwelling units across the state.
Who is your target audience for this? What kind of property owner do you think might be especially interested or benefit from adding an accessory dwelling unit?
Since this was a AARP grant, we were really thinking about our elderly folks and sort of retirees looking to downsize. This is kind of an opportunity for people who want to stay in the neighborhood but don't need all the space that their house currently has. They can sort of move into a smaller cottage in their backyard, so stay in the neighborhood and generate additional revenue if they want to by renting out their main unit. That's one option. Another potential target is just families that are trying to care for an elderly relative who could potentially move into the ADU. So there's a lot of opportunities for sort of intergenerational living for both elder care and child care is another option. And of course, as a college town, we're always looking for opportunities for college students and young professionals to transition out of dormitory living in sort of more of a neighborhood.
One part of the story, if we're doing new construction, well, we might need to go to a bank and get a loan for it. Do you see financial and mortgage institutions being ready to say, oh, yeah, this is something we can work with, as opposed to this is alien to everything we do?
This is a new concept in La Crosse, but it's been used for, many decades and has grown more in popularity in the last decade or more. So I think more financial institutions are getting wise to accessory dwelling units as a housing potential. So that's some outreach that we need to do. We've laid the groundwork with allowing ADUs, and we've got our library to show examples of ADUs. Now we need to make sure that the financing is in place. One of the responsibilities of the city is to, make it as easy as possible if we're trying to see growth in this area.
As we wind up, Louis, are you getting requests for permits for these ADUs now that this ordinance is in place?
Yeah, actually, in years prior to having our ordinance, we'd get questions, a couple times a year about the potential of having ADUs. And now that we allow them, we're getting more and more questions about it and developing concepts and testing the limits of our requirements and seeing what works and what doesn't. I think we're hoping to see some growth in this area. It's going to be small and may not be for everybody, but it's a really exciting opportunity to add more housing to our city.
Louis, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was Louis Coleman, the Environmental and Sustainability Planner for the City of La Crosse. We're talking about a new online database focused on sustainable housing ideas. Joining us now are Matt Bryan, a Wisconsin-certified architect based in La Crosse. We also have project manager Jacob Bielansky of Milwaukee architectural firm. They are winners of La Crosse's design competition. Jacob, let's start with you. What was on your mind?
Well, Milwaukee, which is where I'm based out of, has been working on its plan, Growth MKE. And as we've encountered a lot of the different discussions about people's concerns, as well as people's hopes and dreams in this, we saw La Crosse as a great opportunity to engage with another different municipality and also just kind of share ideas and cross-pollinate.
And how about you, Matt?
Yeah, here in La Crosse, accessory dwellings are a pretty new idea. And so there's a lot of initial enthusiasm. And it just so happens that my interest also is in smaller projects like this, so that I see a lot of design opportunity within very small constraints, small footprints, and just a lot of potential for some really diverse solutions.
And Matt, let's start with how you solved this challenge. A German concept, I understand, called the Wonder Hut. Talk us through this.
Yeah, the idea in some ways was pretty playful, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the essence of it is pretty simple in that it's a small footprint, about 500, 600 square feet, split into 2 rooms that share a bathroom. And with that much laid out, beyond that, the potentials for how to use it are very much open-ended. That's where the wonder piece comes in terms of a wide range of possibilities for how you might choose to occupy it. It might be somewhere you live, somewhere one of your relatives lives. It might be a room for your kids. It might be a room for you, an office for you.
And then, Jacob, your take on converting an existing garage, as I understand it, into a guest house. Talk us through how you met this challenge.
Yeah, so we had an existing project in our company portfolio with Van Cleve Architects that had converted a existing garage into a guest house, and the plan was readily adaptable to accessibility. And in our minds, doing less is just a fundamental piece of sustainability. And so we wanted to show how we can reuse existing infrastructure. And at our presentation, La Crosse also wanted to focus on this overall site design and how this integrates with neighboring properties, because a lot of concerns that people have about ADUs and higher density housing has to do with preserving neighborhood character and fabric, also integrating in a good way.
And Matt, with that in mind, I looked on the map. So the city of La Crosse offered a particular site in La Crosse, a lot sort of south of downtown a little bit. Were you thinking, okay, how do we fit into this particular neighborhood?
Yeah, great question. The short answer is I was not looking at this particular site, but this particular site happens to be emblematic of a lot of sites in La Crosse. It's served not only by a main road, but also by an alley on the backside. And that alone opens up a lot of opportunity. La Crosse is a very well-suited city for accessory dwellings in that sense, where you could potentially have an accessory dwelling primarily served by an alley and a main house primarily served by a main road. And each could have their own entrance in a sense. So,
and Jacob, that's interesting. Coming from Milwaukee, is there a difference in your mind in designing an accessory dwelling unit in La Crosse versus Milwaukee? Or on the other hand, I've been to Milwaukee. There's a lot of alleys there too.
Yep, that sure is. And it really depends on where you are in Milwaukee, because the different zoning areas that we have here produce neighborhoods of very different character and also different types of situations you have to build around. And a lot of times architecture winds up being a lot like tailoring. Everything is very specific, trying to meet people's needs. And our approach took what was there at the lot and just wanted to show different strategies as to how it might relate to this property in a way that could be adaptable to other ones, because La Crosse's adopted ordinances allow for many different types of construction in terms of it being a detached ADU, being an attached ADU to the main house, and so, or even a second story addition to a garage. With our reuse of a garage, another component is that we fit our whole floor plan into a 450 square foot piece, which is a pretty average size for garage properties. So we wanted to show that a design like this can fit in with all sorts of different types of circumstances, and that just because it's a small residence doesn't mean that it's not going to be a good residence.
Now, both of your designs and some of the other competitors are going to be in this library of accessory dwelling unit designs in La Crosse. Jacob, let's start with you. What are your hopes for how people use these designs, your design and others, and how they can maybe adapt them to meet the particularities of the lot that they're being built in?
Well, it's less about the exact design and more about many of the principles. So we talked extensively at the hearing about just being a good neighbor, considering that this is going to be somebody that's living in this dwelling, and we really need to treat this with care and not just try to prop up as much as we can to help housing, which is very necessary, but like all things, needs to be handled with some discern. We wanted to show different ways that this can be accessible, and that accessibility isn't just something for a particular demographic or people in certain points of their life. It's something that makes for just comfortable design. Broadly speaking, there are dozens of different ways that these could be planned and designed to fit people's needs. Matt's is a great example of it. It's a fantastic design. But no two people are alike, and we just wanted to show and provide evidence that it's affordable, feasible, and better than I think connotations commonly will try to argue.
Matt, have you gotten any local interest since the contest and your design went up online?
I've had a couple people reach out. Some are still ongoing projects or in the early stages. One of them actually is someone who has an old playhouse in their backyard. So similar to the garage adaptation idea, there's the potential there to adapt a playhouse for an accessory dwelling use.
Jacob, we hear a lot about high housing costs in Wisconsin. That's part of what this ADU issue is helping to tackle, and high costs of construction in Wisconsin and materials and labor and more. Do you have that in mind as you're thinking about how to make accessory dwelling units not just functional but affordable to build in the first place?
Absolutely. That was one of the main reasons that we chose to reuse the existing garage, which was ironically enough counter to the prompt. We were supposed to ignore it, but I think that a compromise like that is a very real situation that a lot of people will face, that you have something that you can use, and it might be the difference between doing it or not doing it. Here in Milwaukee, we also have a lot of similar issues with, obviously, with everything you mentioned, labor, materials, and maybe a bit more so here than in La Crosse, but also with land scarcity. But we have a lot of single family properties, and ADUs, once again, here provide another option in our tool belt for helping promote more dwelling units in the city.
And Matt, you're there in La Crosse. This ADU ordinance is still pretty new, this design contest hoping to kick things off. Do you feel a sense of momentum, that there is interest and impetus in making these things a reality?
I do, working in the architecture community, but also just talking to friends and family casually who have all kinds of dreams for what they could do with their backyard. Anything from a garden to an ADU. And those things aren't mutually incompatible. I think the dream of building a backyard kind of oasis, if you will, is something that's a really widespread dream for a lot of people. And I think there could be a ripple effect where one neighbor sees something going on next door, an ADU going up. They see how successful that is, how much fun that is to have. And then I could see it spreading its enthusiasm that way.
We'll leave it there. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. It's been a dream to be on public radio. Thanks for having me.
And Jacob, thanks for joining us.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
We've been talking about accessory dwelling units with Wisconsin architects Matt Bryan and Jacob Bielansky. We also heard from Louis Coleman, the environmental and sustainability planner for the city of La Crosse. WPR News is working on a series on great road trips around Wisconsin on fun themes.
Themes so far include ice cream and indie bookstore tours, and there may be some baseball and haunted sites in the works as well.
And we want to hear what you build road trips around here in Wisconsin, maybe even something you did over this holiday weekend. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org or call or text us at 888-642-0232. Again, the number is 888-642-0232.
Wisconsin Today producers include Trevor Hook, Mackenzie Crummy, and Courtney Everett. Our technical directors are Tyler Ditter and Sarah Hopeful. Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. You're listening to WPR News.